Hey folks, welcome back to Failure at Retirement. Today I want to talk about starting your own business. And all of these videos on retirement and this one, starting your own business, they're just meant to be motivational. I'm not an expert. If you can get some nugget of wisdom that helps you, that's great. That's all Little Failure's hoping for here. Just strictly motivational and just kind of reviewing how it worked for me. All right, so let's get started. So I've started quite a few businesses. I started my first one in the early 90s, and I've kind of learned a few things along the way, and that's what I wanted to share with you here today. So first of all, starting your own business, it's not for everyone. I don't recommend it for everyone. I know people that have tried and failed. I know people who I'm sure could do it, but they're scared to try. I don't blame them. It's not easy. It's a lot of work. I've known plenty of people that have worked good jobs their whole life and done fantastic. Um, in their case, by working the job, lots of times they didn't take on as much stress. They for sure didn't take on the risk. They for sure didn't end up, in most cases, working the hours that it takes. So, I really think if you have a good job and you enjoy it, oh, I don't know if it's worth it to start your own business. If you want to, for something to do on the side, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, okay. I wouldn't bank my retirement plan on that, honestly. I guess it depends some on how old you are. But a few key pointers I picked up along the way. My first business in the early 90s, I was buying junk tractors and parting them out and selling them all over the United States and a little bit into Canada. They were mostly John Deere 40s. I had a 420 or two and one 430, and it just came together. My dad knew where several of them were. He kind of wanted to buy them for the parts, but he didn't really have the time to do anything with it. And I finally told him, you know what, I think I'll buy them. And so I bought them, and I bought like 3 or 4 of them right out of the gate, and paid a couple hundred a piece for them, and started UPS in these tractors all over the country. And this was all pre-internet, um, no marketplace, no eBay, nothing. I just put an ad in a couple magazines and started shipping parts all over the country. I did okay. It was never going to be a big enough business to make a living on. Not in this part of the country, there just aren't the tractors around like that. I know some parts of the country there are, and that works, but around here, kind of a tough go. So the first thing I learned on this business is it wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't sustainable simply because there just weren't enough junk tractors around. And I really had gotten right out of the gate where I kind of specialized in that series of older John Deere 2-cylinder. And after a couple of years, I just basically ran out of parts. And I chased tractors for quite a while, cast a pretty wide net, went quite a distance looking for them, out of state even. But bottom line is, it wasn't sustainable because there just wasn't the raw material, so to speak, to make it keep working. And so that was my takeaway. I made some fantastic side money on it. It was kind of a neat, interesting deal. I kind of met people from all over the US who call me repeatedly buying parts. That was kind of neat. So, whatever you do, especially if it's that type of business, buying and selling stuff like that, make sure that it's sustainable, that you have a good long term source of whatever it is you're going to sell. So, another takeaway I've got on starting your own business is first thing you do right out of the gate, like the first day, go open a checking account just for the business. You don't have to have a business account. You can just open a personal account, put your name on it, your spouse's name, and I guess it depends on if you're doing business under a business name or just under your own name. Initially, most of my small startup businesses were just in my name, and I just went down, opened a checking account, and all the money for that business went in and out of that account, totally separate from our house account. That really gave me a handle on the money. I did the books myself always. I really knew what money was coming in, what was going out, were we profitable or not. I could tell, and that wasn't blended into the house. And we weren't robbing that business account to support the house. Okay, like most of those in those days, it was a side hustle initially. But even, I don't really recommend you run out and quit your job because you're going to start a business in 6 months. You got to have that cash flow because it's not going to be there from the business initially. All right. But this is where the checking account helps out. Have a separate checking account that is for the business only. Okay. And then this kind of leads to the next thing. Like, hopefully initially, in my case, most of them starting out, I had my job that I was working. And so we were running the household off of that income. And I know not everybody is that fortunate, but we were running the household off that income. So, for example, when I started farming on my own, opened the checking account right away, still had my job for almost 2 years before they laid me off. And that allowed me to never take a penny out of the farming business, which was good because the first year we actually lost a few dollars and, just extra expenses getting started, figuring things out. We didn't make money first year, and honestly didn't make a ton of money the second year, only kind of a little bit. But then when I lost the job, first thing that I decided I need to do is I had to pay myself. And back then I was farming on a crop note, so I had money borrowed, but I was paid myself first. And that is a rich dad, poor dad thing. If you've never read that book, you're interested in getting ahead, definitely read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. His thing was always pay yourself first. And I scratched my head on that for a while. Like, you want to be careful. You don't want to overpay yourself. You don't want to give yourself too big a salary. Um, but that's what I did. Once I lost my job, I had to put money into the household income stream. So even though we were on a crop note and sometimes it was borrowed money, on the 1st and the 15th, I wrote myself a check. And my wife, Mrs. Failure, she took those checks, put them in the household account. She managed the house. I managed the business stuff. We were always a little weird that way. Like, she took care of the house always. I took care of any business related thing, investments. I took care of that. So pay yourself first. Again, don't get extravagant. You've got to budget this out. You've got to know what your business can afford. You don't want to make your business lame and short on cash because you're transferring it all to your house and living off of it. So be careful, but make sure and pay yourself first. So that kind of brings me to the next thing. The next thing is make sure that you're not undercapitalized. So when I started farming, Mrs. Failure and we'd kind of been saving up for a little bit, um, partially in case I was kind of looking to do that for several months before, a year or so. So, and I had a really good job at the time, and I had been making good money. Um, and I kind of started farming right shortly after the economy started tapering off in '08. But I still had some money saved up from like '05, '06 when the economy was hot, sales were good. I was making some good money, putting a little bit away. And so I was able to take that money and then and start up with that. But then right away I went to farm credit, got a crop note, and so I was never in debt to my vendors. I never owed my fertilizer guy money for more than 30 days. I never, had a bill at the parts house or anything like that. I used that crop note and my own money, and I was always working toward self financing that. And honestly, it took about, I'm going to say about 4 years, and Farm Credit fired me. And I was very unhappy about that. I was in the middle of a 5 year deal with those guys, and I went in one January to renew, showed them my plan, went over my crop plan, went over my books with them, and they said, no, we're not going to finance you. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, you got too much money. And I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, I definitely don't. Like, I got plans, I got taxes to pay, I got bills coming, I got a mortgage on the one ranch we owe. By the way, you're carrying that mortgage. And they said, nope, we're not going to do it. Well, I eventually talked them into giving me a little bit of money, and it was kind of just barely what I needed to pay my taxes that spring and keep moving forward. But it was a little rough there for a while. And when I asked him, believe it or not, I asked him, like, I don't understand the problem here. Okay, I'm making money, but that should make me a safer borrower. And they said, well, you've got way too many hits on your credit score. And I said, what are you talking about? I hadn't hardly borrowed any money. Um, how do I have hits on my credit score? I said, I want to see my credit report. So they grab it and they throw it across the desk, and I look at it. Farm Credit West, Farm Credit West, Farm Credit West, Farm Credit West. There's 20 of them on there in like 2 or 3 years, all from Farm Credit West. And I'm like, you guys are the ones doing this. You're the ones running my credit score down. And I'm like, why are you even doing this? Like, every time my annual renewal comes up on my crop note, you hit my credit not once but twice. And at once, like, okay, but twice, like, that's on you. And then I had the mortgage with them, and I had, a couple other little things, but it was all them. And I'm like, you guys, you don't make any sense. So be careful on the lending, and make sure that you're not undercapitalized. Like, it's never great to borrow money. Um, in my case, that was really kind of the only way it was going to work to get going. But like I said, I was on a plan that whole time to get that paid off, and it only took me about, like I said, I think 4 years roughly, and then I was self financing from there on out. And what a game changer that is. The bank is just not stealing your money through interest, right? You're working on your own money, and you're not sharing any of it with the bank. Like, they're a for profit situation. They're not doing this for you for free. So, anyway, make sure you get plenty of money. I've seen people start businesses, are light on cash. They just don't have the money to buy the materials they need to keep the business operational. They're borrowing money on their house to make the business go. And that, folks, that just gets dicey, super dicey. I was able to do it without borrowing money on my house ever, not really putting up any other capital, right? Just doing it, even with the crop note. The bank knew the crops were worth money, and so they never even actually did a crop consignment with me. They just it wasn't a whole lot of money, honestly. Like what I initially asked for in my first budget, my first loan with them, when they approved it, they actually doubled my budget. So I always had the capital I needed. So let's see. Let me think about this. Give me a sec here. All right. So last couple things I want to mention. First of all, in this, like almost every business I started, honestly, you need yourself a team. It doesn't matter if you have employees or not. I have stayed away from employees personally. Never had anybody work for me long term. Okay. But that doesn't matter. You need a team. And what I mean by a team is you need, a CPA, you need, depending on what you're doing, maybe an attorney. You need professional people. And then beyond that, like, you need to have a relationship, like in farming, like, you better have a relationship with your parts house. You better have a relationship with your fertilizer guy, your seed guy. You need to get to know some people, like, and those people will help you. They'll give you advice. They'll help you out in a pinch. Um, I was always able to call my fertilizer guy and say, dude, we messed up. I need some more fertilizer. I need some more herbicide, whatever it is. How soon can you have it here? Well, I was paid my bill right away. I always had a great relationship with him. Normally same day it's there. Um, so make sure you have a team and make sure you have relationships. And honestly, the most successful people I've known who started businesses, I'm going to say farming especially, but it goes for anything. They had relationships. They were networkers. They, sorry about that. Mrs. Failure rolled up on me. Um, I don't know. Not clear on what she wanted. These things happen. Anyway, um, I guess probably my final thought here is you got to realize if you're starting your own business how hard you're going to work. Like the first, I mean, depends on what you're doing and how fast it takes off on you. If it takes off on you, probably the first year, honestly, if not longer, maybe 2 years, you're going to work like crazy on that. Like it is going to be pretty time consuming, pretty all encompassing. Like if you want that to go, don't really plan on having time off. You're going to work. It's not going to be like working a job because you're going to have to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Because you don't want it to fail. You can't afford that. So you got to be committed. And this is part of why I say if you have a job that you like, you enjoy it, you make good money doing your job, it's fine if you want to try something new on the side or whatever. And if it takes off, great. And if it doesn't, whatever you tried, right? But don't borrow a bunch of money in your house. Don't go broke trying to make this thing work. Have a plan. Have a good business plan going in. I guess that's another point. But have a really, really solid business plan going in. Have a budget. Know what it's going to cost you. Uh, know what the plan is. Know what you're going to sell, who you're going to sell it to, what you're going to repair, or whatever it is, right? Doesn't matter what it is. Have a very, very solid plan, because, like I said, you just can't afford for that to fail. Anyway, I think that pretty well wraps it up. I'm sure I'll think of something else later. Almost always do. But if you have any questions about it, put a comment. Like, I'm happy to answer your questions. I read all the comments. Uh, I welcome your feedback. All right. So go ahead and drop a comment. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. That way you don't miss any of this joy. Okay. All right. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you have a nice day. We'll see you next time on Failure at Retirement.